Chapter 1. Ashgrove Hall kept 460 candles in its storerooms, and on the evening Iris Lockwood arrived, the Duke of Ashgrove was sitting in the dark. Iris did not know this yet. She knew only that she had come 300 miles north in a carrier's cart with a trunk, a dog, and 40 pounds in the world, and that the house in front of her had more windows than her entire village, and not one of them lit. She stood in the carriage sweep with the wind going through her like a rumor, and looked up at all that black glass and thought, with the clarity that arrives when a person is too tired to be polite even inside her own skull, that somebody in there was economizing, and it was not the person who could afford to. The dog at her feet was called Pepper. He was 11 years old, roughly the shape of a bolster, and he had the moral authority of a field marshal and the stamina of a boiled egg. He looked at the front steps. He looked at Iris. He sat down.
"I am not carrying you," said Iris.
Pepper waited. "I am carrying you," said Iris. Her aunt met her at the side door. Mrs. Caldwell had run Ashgrove Hall for 14 years without an error, a raised voice, or, so far as anybody had ever been able to establish, an opinion. She was 51. Her hair was iron gray and pinned so tightly that it appeared to have been decided upon rather than arranged, and she wore the keys of the house at her waist on a plain steel ring, and she looked at her niece and then at the dog under her niece's arm, and something happened at the corner of her mouth that, in a warmer woman, would have been a smile, and in Mrs. Caldwell was closer to a treaty. "You will be quiet in the passages," she said.
"I will be quiet in the passages," said Iris.
"Aunt, why are the east wing curtains hung backwards?"
"They are not hung backwards.
They are hung with the lining outwards. Somebody has hung them for the benefit of the garden. The garden does not care. The garden has never once looked in." Mrs. Caldwell was silent for a moment. Then she said, 40 minutes, in the tone of a woman noting a time for the record, and took her upstairs. That was Thursday. On Friday, Iris met the Duke. She came into the library at 4 in the afternoon with a coal scuttle and a box of matches, because the room was on her list and the room was cold. It was also dark, in the particular way that a room is dark when somebody has decided that ringing a bell is a greater inconvenience than blindness. She crossed to the fireplace, knelt, and built the fire with the quick, unsentimental competence of a woman who had built 10,000 of them, and considered each one a personal victory over the fundamental hostility of the English climate. She lit it. She stood. She brushed her hands on her apron. She turned. There was a man in the wing chair. She did not startle because startling took time she did not have. "Oh," she said, "you are in here." "I am," said the man, "in the dark." "The light is adequate." "The light is not adequate," said Iris. "The light is a rumor. I have seen brighter conditions inside a wardrobe. You are reading by the power of suggestion. How are your eyes?" "My eyes are fine." "Your eyes are squinting. I can see the squint from the fireplace, and I have been in this room for 50 seconds. You have been in it for 2 hours. She glanced at the candle stub on the mantel, which had burned down about 2 inches, and made a small sound of confirmation. 2 hours of squinting at wheat. "I am going to light the candelabra. You may object. I will note the objection. I will light it anyway." She lit the candelabra, 9 candles in old brass, and the warm light went up the walls and found the gilt on 11 generations of Wyndham picture frames. And the report in the man's lap became, for the first time that afternoon, legible. Iris looked at the report. Then she looked at him. "That column is last year's," she said. "This year's is on the left. You have been reading 1819 for the better part of an hour. The yield was better then. I can see why you would prefer it." The Duke of Ashgrove looked up. He was tall, even sitting down, which is a difficult trick and not a friendly one. Black hair, cut short, at a jaw like the corner of a good building, and eyes the color of slate under rain. He did not fidget. He did not blink more than was strictly necessary. He had the stillness of a man who had learned early that motion invites comment. "Who are you?" he said. "Iris, Mrs. Caldwell's niece. Tea will arrive in 4 minutes. You will not need to ring, because ringing would require you to acknowledge that other human beings live in this house. And from the state of this room, you have been avoiding that for some time. The biscuits are ginger. You do not get a choice about the biscuits. The biscuits are what they are." She picked up the scuttle and left. Jasper Wyndham sat in his own library, with a fire he had not asked for, and light he had not authorized, and 1819 lying exposed across his knees, and thought, quite calmly, the way a man reads a weather glass, that she was going to want something. He was not being unkind. He was being accurate. He had 28 years of evidence. Here is the evidence, and it is not a metaphor. It is an inventory. His mother, the 4th Duchess of Ashgrove, had been a woman of extraordinary beauty, considerable intelligence, and no maternal apparatus whatsoever. She had regarded her only child the way a collector regards an acquisition, with satisfaction at the owning, and no interest at all in the handling. She appeared at breakfast, at dinner, and at occasions. At each appearance she was immaculate and distant and smelled of jasmine, and the boy had been named for the scent rather than for anything the naming implied, and he had understood before he could have explained it that her presence was a performance, and that the performance was not for him. His father had been worse, because his father had been generous. Everything the 5th Duke did for his son arrived with an invoice attached. Not a written one, a conversational one. "I have arranged your riding, master. You will ride well. You will not disappoint me." The gift was never a gift. The gift was a deposit, and the deposit expected a return, and the return was never a thank you, which is cheap, but a result, which is not. He had not been beaten, he had not been starved. He had been maintained, the way the silver was maintained and the roof was maintained, with care and regular attention to condition. He was never cold, he was never hungry. He was never told he was unwanted. He was also never told that he was wanted, and a boy will do arithmetic with whatever numbers he is given. By 28, he had held the title 6 years, run the estate himself, and could not recall a single instance in his entire life of being touched by another person without a reason. A handshake, a fitting, a dance required by protocol, a physician's fingers at his wrist. Every touch a transaction, every kindness with terms, and from this he had drawn the only conclusion the figures supported, which was that tenderness is a mechanism. It is the velvet on the trap. It is what people do immediately before they ask. The tea arrived in 4 minutes. It came on a tray with a pot and a cup and the milk already in the cup in exactly the proportion he preferred, which was a proportion he had never in his life spoken aloud to anybody, and 1 ginger biscuit on a plain white plate. "How do you know how I take my tea?" he said. "I asked Mrs. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell knows everything in this household. Mrs. Caldwell is essentially a government. I went to the government. The government told me about the milk." She left. He waited for the agenda. He drank the tea, which was correct. He ate the biscuit, which was considerably better than correct. The agenda did not arrive. That evening a note came up from the Dower House, where his great-aunt, Lady Margaret Wyndham, had been living, complaining and outlasting people since the year the old king went properly mad. She was 87. She was the size of a folded umbrella. She had eyes like 2 chips of winter sky, and she wrote in a hand that had been beautiful in 1752 and had been getting away from her ever since. The note said, "I hear there is a woman in the house who lights fires without being asked. Do not frighten her off. It has taken me 22 years to get a warm room out of you, and I have no wish to begin again from the beginning." Jasper read it twice, folded it, and put it in the drawer with the other things he did not know what to do with. On the 3rd day, she touched him. He was in the hall, gloves on, going out to ride. She was crossing with an armful of linen. she stopped. She tilted her head about 4 degrees. "Your collar is trying to escape," she said. "I beg your pardon." "Your collar, at the back. It has turned itself inside out, and it is making a bid for freedom, and it has very nearly succeeded." "May I?" She did not wait long enough for the answer to mean anything. She reached up, and her fingers went to the back of his neck, and they were there for perhaps 1 second. He flinched. Not a twitch, a whole body contraction, shoulders in, chin down, breath stopped, the response of an animal struck from behind, and it happened before any part of him had a chance to be consulted about it. Her hands stopped. She stepped back. She did not say sorry. She did not ask whether he was all right, which was, he would understand, a great deal later, the single largest mercy anybody had extended to him in a decade. She looked at him with an expression he could not immediately file. Not pity. Something drier. Assessment. She was looking at the flinch the way she had looked at the candelabra and the wrong column, as a fact about the room she happened to be standing in. "Right," she said. "I should have asked. That is on me. The collar is fixed. Your dignity is where you left it. I will ask before I touch you in future, and you may decide for yourself whether the collar or the flinch is the larger problem. I suspect you will choose the flinch. I would choose the collar. We are different people." She went off with the linen. She did not look back, and the not looking back was worse than any sympathy could have been, because sympathy he could have dismissed, and briskness he could not. Jasper stood in his own hall, with his collar straight and the back of his neck burning, and the mathematically certain knowledge that a woman had touched him, and he had flinched, and she had seen it, and catalogued it, and moved on. She was going to use this, that was plain. That was simply how the thing was done. Down in the estate office, Ned Fitch, the underclerk, 19 years old, red-headed, ink to the second knuckle, and possessed of no discretion in any part of his body, mentioned to the second groom that His Grace had come in from his ride looking like a man who had been shot at from a hedge. The second groom mentioned it to the carrier. The carrier mentioned it in Marbury. The county, which had nothing else on that week, began to pay attention. Chapter 2. The blanket happened in November. He fell asleep in the library, which he did not do, and woke at 2 in the morning with the fire gone to embers and a blanket over him. He lay very still and worked the problem. He had not had a blanket. He had not asked for one. Therefore, a person had entered the room while he slept and covered him and gone away again, without waking him and without being present to be thanked. He turned that last part over several times. It would not come apart in his hands. At 6, he went down to the kitchen. Iris was at the table with tea and the household accounts, and Pepper lying flat across her feet like a draft excluder. "Good morning, Your Grace. You have the look of a man who slept in a chair. This is because you slept in a chair. I have opinions." "The blanket." "Yes, I put a blanket on you. Before you ask, no, I did not stand over you watching. I was locking up. The library door was open. You were asleep, the fire was dead, and you were doing the curling thing that people do when they are cold in their sleep. Grown men should not curl. It is an offense against posture. I fetched the blanket from the morning room. The whole operation took 14 seconds. I counted. It was not romantic. It was logistical." "Why?" She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "Why did I put a blanket on a cold person?" "Yes." She set the cup down. "Your Grace, I want you to hear the question you have just asked me, because I do not believe you heard it on the way out. You have asked me to explain why one person would cover another person who was cold. I am going to answer it. The answer is because you were cold. That is the whole answer. There is no second half. There is no subtext, no plan, no grand design being executed through the medium of soft furnishings. You were cold. I had a blanket. The distance between the two was 12 feet. I closed the distance. This is not complicated. This is what mammals do. He said nothing, because there was nothing in his experience shaped anything like it. I can see from your face that because you were cold is insufficient, she said. I can see you are waiting for the rest. The part where I tell you what I want, the terms and conditions of the blanket. He had been. He had been waiting for exactly that, and she had described the waiting so precisely that he felt, briefly and very unpleasantly, transparent. There are no terms, said Iris. The blanket is not a contract. The blanket is a blanket. I appreciate this may be a novel concept. In this house, kindness appears to be handled with the caution one reserves for an unexploded shell. I am telling you that the blanket is safe. You may stop looking at it as though it is going to go off. She stood, took her cup to the sink, and paused at the door. If it helps, she said. The blanket smells of lavender. My aunt puts sachets in the morning room drawers. If you are going to be suspicious of a blanket, be suspicious of one that smells nice. That seems to me the minimum standard for a decent conspiracy. She went. Pepper hauled himself upright in 3 separate movements, each of which he appeared to regret individually, and followed her. Jasper stood in his own kitchen and turned the blanket over in his mind, looking for the seam, and could not find one. He filed it. He waited. His birthday was the 11th of November, and he did not observe it, having nobody to observe it with and no habit of doing it alone. He came down to breakfast, and there was a small brown paper parcel beside his plate, tied with string that had plainly been used before. Inside was a book, the 2nd volume of Buick's History of British Birds, water in it, cracked spine, dog-eared to the point of insubordination. A loved copy, a used-up copy. Inside the front board, in a small square hand, Your Grace, this was my father's. He read it every autumn, and he talked to it aloud, which was alarming when I was 7 and endearing when I was 17. I do not own many things of his. I own this. It is a loan and not a gift, because gifts require occasions, and I decline to acknowledge a ducal birthday that the Duke himself will not acknowledge. Return it when you have finished. If you damage it, I will notice, and I will comment, and the commenting will be extensive. He found her in the linen room after breakfast, holding the book out in front of him like something warm he had picked up by mistake. Miss Lockwood, I cannot accept this. You cannot accept a loan. You have given me your dead father's book. I have lent you my dead father's book. If I had given it to you, I should be dead inside, and I am not dead inside. I am parting with a volume temporarily, because the man I live adjacent to reads nothing whatsoever but wheat, and I find that personally offensive. My father's book is about swifts and hedgehogs, and the exact quality of light over a Hampshire meadow in July. Those are not the same thing. One of them makes you a better farmer. The other makes you a better person. I am prioritizing. You are prioritizing my personhood. Somebody has to. You are clearly not going to. She went back to folding. Do not spill on it. The pencil marks are his. They are the most important things I own. I am therefore trusting you with the most important things I own, which is either the cleverest or the stupidest act of my life, and I have not yet decided which. He read it that evening, and then again, and then a 3rd time. The annotations were small and careful and alive. Yes, beside a passage on the cuckoo, not quite right beside the elms, beautiful, beside a single line about the first frost, a tenant farmer in Oxfordshire arguing in pencil with a naturalist he had never met, and losing on purpose, for the pleasure of it, for years. Jasper closed the book at midnight and sat holding it. The ask was coming. That much was clear. The biscuit had been the introduction. The blanket had been the second move. The book was the third, and the fourth would be the ask. The fourth thing was a scarf. December came in hard out of the north, and he rode at 6:30 every morning, regardless. And one morning he came back through the yard with the wind having done what the wind does, and Iris was at the kitchen door taking in the milk. "Your ears are the color of a beetroot," she said.
"I do not wear scarves."
"I can see that. Your ears are a visual essay on the subject, and they are making a very compelling argument. Your ears are more persuasive than most of the House of Commons." On his desk that morning there was a scarf, dark blue wool, hand knitted, heavy. And near one end the pattern went wrong, quite clearly wrong. The rose sliding half a stitch out of true and never recovering. No note. He picked it up. He put it in the drawer. To wear it would be to accept it, and to accept it would be to owe. And he had spent his entire life keeping the ledger clean. He did not wear it for 2 weeks. On the 15th morning, which was the coldest of that winter, and the sort of cold that made the horse look at him with open reproach, he opened the drawer and took the scarf out, and put it on, and rode. It was warm. His ears were not a beetroot. He came back through the kitchen. Iris was at the table with the accounts. She saw him. She saw it. She did not smile, and she did not comment. And then, without looking up, she said, "The scarf was my father's, in case you were wondering. He knitted it himself, badly, which is why it goes wrong near the end. He maintained until the day he died that the fault was artistic. It was not artistic. It was a mistake. He was a man who turned his mistakes into features. I liked that about him." She went on adding up a column. He walked through the kitchen and up the back stairs, and he did not take the scarf off. And somewhere between the second landing and his own door, he understood that he had now been given a dead man's book and a dead man's scarf, by a woman who had asked him for precisely nothing, and that this was either the largest campaign ever mounted against him, or something for which he had no filing system at all. 2 days after that, Mrs. Augusta Vane came to call. She was 36, and the widow of his cousin Robert, and she was beautiful in the deliberate way of a woman who has understood since girlhood that her face is her working capital. Auburn hair, green velvet, jet at her ears. She came into the drawing room the way weather comes into a valley. She admired the fire. She admired the light. She took a biscuit from the plate and held it up and turned it a little, examining it, the way one examines a coin one suspects. "Ginger," she said, "how homely. How very kind of somebody. You have a new woman in the house, I hear. The housekeeper's niece." "Yes." "How fortunate you are." She set the biscuit down, uneaten. "I do hope she is not tiring herself. Girls of that sort will run themselves quite to pieces trying to be noticed. It is not their fault. It is only that they have so few instruments to hand." She stayed 40 minutes, and every single one of them was pleasant. At the Dower House, Lady Margaret received a full report by 4 o'clock, because Ned Fitch had told the second groom, who had told the Dower House cook, who had told everybody. "Augusta Vane," said Lady Margaret, "has the finest manners in this county, and I would not leave her alone in a room with my will." "Aunt, do not aunt me. I am 87, and I have earned the right to say the true thing first and apologize never." She rapped the floor once with the ivory head of her cane. "Bring the girl down here. I want to look at her." "She is the housekeeper's niece." "I am aware. I have not gone soft in the head, only in the knees. Bring her." He brought her on the Sunday. Lady Margaret looked at Iris for a long moment, taking in the gray dress and the badly pinned hair, and the chap's knuckles and the dog under the arm, and then said, "Sit down. You are making my neck ache." And to Jasper, "Go and look at the garden." "It is December." "Then it will not take you long." He went and looked at the garden. What was said in his absence he did not learn for a considerable time. But he came back to find Iris sitting very upright with a cup of the good tea, and Lady Margaret saying, "And that is why he stands like a hat stand," and Iris saying, "I had assumed something of the sort, but I did not like to speculate," and Lady Margaret saying, "Speculate. Speculation is the only sport left to me. I cannot ride, and I will not play cards with liars." In the carriage going back, Iris said nothing for 1.5 miles. Then she said, "Your great-aunt is the funniest person I have ever met, and she has been sitting in that house alone for 11 years with a bell that nobody answers, and if you do not go down there twice a week from now on, I shall go myself, and I shall take the dog, and she will spoil him, and he is already unbearable." Jasper said, "Twice a week. Twice a week." He went twice a week. It did not occur to him until March that he had been given an instruction by a housekeeper's niece and had simply obeyed it. We will take a very short break. If you do not want to miss new stories, please subscribe to the channel. Chapter 3. In February, 4 months and a great many biscuits after her arrival, the Duke of Ashgrove did something he had never done in his life. He confronted somebody. He knocked on her door at 6 in the morning. She opened it dressed, because she rose at 5, with Pepper behind her, too old to rise for anybody. "Your Grace, it is 6 o'clock. I am not at my most diplomatic at 6 o'clock. Anything said to me before 7 will be met with honesty rather than tact. That is not a threat. It is a weather report." "What do you want?" "At 6 in the morning? Tea, possibly a second biscuit. World peace, though I am flexible on that one." "From me." His voice was perfectly level, and his hands were not. "What do you want from me? You have been in this house 4 months. You have brought me tea I did not ask for. You have lit fires I did not ring for. You have provided biscuits daily without request. You covered me with a blanket while I slept. You lent me your father's book. You gave me your father's scarf. You have done all of it, and you have asked for nothing. Not once. Not one thing. In 4 months you have given me, conservatively, 60 biscuits, 30 fires, 14 cups of unsolicited tea, 1 blanket, 1 book, and 1 scarf. What is the invoice? What is the return? What do you want?" Iris stood in her doorway holding her tea and looked at him. She looked at his face and at the scarf, which he had now worn every morning for 3 weeks, and at his hands, which were at his sides and shaking. "Your Grace," she said, "I am going to say this once, and I am going to say it plainly, and I am not going to soften it, because softening is a 7 o'clock activity." He nodded. "There is no invoice. There is no return. The biscuits are biscuits. The blanket is a blanket. The scarf is a scarf. I brought you tea because you were sitting in a cold room, and tea is what you bring to cold people. I covered you because you were asleep and cold, and covering cold sleeping people is what you do when you were raised by a man who did the same thing every night on a sofa in a farmhouse in Oxfordshire, without thanks and without a bill, because that is what people do. Not all people, not your people, apparently, but my people, my father's people, people who were loved correctly." Her voice had not risen. She was not angry. She was something he had not seen in her before, and it took him several seconds to identify it, and when he did, it was worse than anger. She was sad. And the sadness was not for herself. "The reason you are standing at my door at 6 in the morning demanding an invoice for a blanket," she said, "is that nobody has ever handed you one without it. I have watched you for 4 months. I have watched you hold that biscuit for 11 seconds every single morning before you eat it, as though it might be rigged. 11. I have counted. I have watched you put a scarf in a drawer for a fortnight because wearing it felt like signing something. I have watched you flinch when I touched your collar, and you flinched because being touched for no reason does not exist in your experience. Every touch you have ever had has been part of a transaction. I understand it. I'm not angry about it. I'm heartbroken about it, which is inconvenient, because I barely know you, and heartbreak at this stage is what my father would have called getting ahead of yourself, Iris. Have a biscuit." She drank some tea. "There is no invoice. There has never been an invoice. If you cannot believe that today, that is all right. I will bring the biscuit tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. I will keep bringing them until you can pick one up without counting to 11 first. I am extremely patient, and I am extremely stubborn. My father said I was the most stubborn creature he had ever met, and he once argued with a goat for 40 minutes about the right of way to a gate, and the goat gave in. I will outlast your suspicion. I have snacks. I am prepared." She stepped back and closed the door gently, without letting the latch click. Jasper stood in the corridor for a length of time he never afterwards established. At noon, a biscuit appeared on his desk. Ginger. Warm. No note. He picked it up. He counted. He reached 7 and ate it. The next day, 5. The day after, 3. By the end of the following week, he picked it up and put it in his mouth like a man. And the world did not end, and the bill did not come, and the free did not kill him. The thaw after that was not an event. It was arithmetic. Small quantities, added daily, arriving eventually at a different number. He began leaving his study door open when she was working in the hall. She passed. Sometimes she said things, passing with an armful of curtains. "The third paragraph of whatever you are reading is wrong. I can see it from here. The numbers do not meet in the middle. I can add. It is one of my few marketable skills." Passing with a mop. "You have been at that desk 4 hours. Your spine is preparing a formal complaint. Stand up, walk to the window, look at something that is not paper. I recommend the oak. The oak has no opinions about wheat. It is restful company." Passing with Pepper under one arm, because Pepper had retired from stairs and was now conveyed up them like a small, furious emperor. Pepper says, "Good afternoon." I am translating. What he actually said was a noise like a cushion giving up, but I choose to read it generously. He and I have an understanding. I carry him, and he tolerates my existence. It is the most functional relationship in this house. He did not answer, at first. The answers came the way green comes to a garden in March, in single shoots, tentative, easily missed. One morning, as she passed with the mop, he said, "The oak is losing its leaves." She stopped. "That is because it is November," she said. "Trees do this. It is not a personal betrayal. They come back. The oak is committed to the relationship, unlike some of us." Something moved in his face. It was not a smile. It was the front 2 inches of a smile arriving and then reconsidering, like a man putting his head round a door and finding a party in progress. She saw it. She said nothing whatever about it. She mopped on. Ned Fitch, in the estate office, informed the second groom that His Grace had very nearly smiled, and by Thursday there were men in Marbury laying small sums on it. He returned the Buick at 6 one morning, setting it down beside her cup. "Your father had good taste." "He had excellent taste in books, and appalling taste in trousers. He wore a pair of yellow ones to the autumn assembly at Kelbridge, and the master of ceremonies asked whether he was quite well. He was perfectly well. He simply liked yellow trousers. I have never forgiven him." She put her hand flat on the cover. "Did you read The Swifts?" "I read all of it." "The Swifts are the best part. He used to sit out every July and watch them go over the mill. He said they were the fastest thing in the sky, and the freest, and the least concerned with human opinion. And he admired all 3, and wished he had more of each. And he was right. He ought to have had more of each. But he was a tenant farmer in Oxfordshire, and tenant farmers in Oxfordshire do not get to be Swifts. They get to watch Swifts, which is also good." She held the book a moment. the way a person holds something that is both an object and a man in a garden at 7 in the evening.
Then she put it in her apron pocket.
Thank you for returning it undamaged. I should have been upset. I am not good at upset. Upset on me comes out as anger, and anger on me looks like a small woman with strong views and a large dog. And that combination has cleared rooms. In March, he took a fever and was 3 days in bed. On the second evening, his door opened and Iris came in with a tray, put it down, and sat in the chair beside the bed. Nobody had ever sat in that chair. There had never been an occasion on which anybody was invited. She took out a book, opened it, and began to read. "What are you doing?" he said.
"Reading. In my bedroom."
"In a room next to a person who is ill and who has lain here 2 days with nobody sitting beside him, which I know because my aunt told me, and she told me with the face of a woman who has wanted to sit with you herself for 6 years and has not, because you never asked, and because she is too professional to impose, and because this household appears to have decided that illness is a solo pursuit, like chess. I disagree. Illness is the one occasion in a life when another person in the room is not an imposition, but a requirement. I am not asking your permission because you would say no, and your no would be wrong, and I am not in the business of obeying wrong answers." She turned a page.
"How long do you intend to sit there?" "Until you are asleep. Then I will go. I will not watch you sleep. That is unpleasant behavior. I will establish that you have not died, which is a reasonable precaution, and then I will go. And in the morning the soup will be cold, and I will bring new soup. This is the system. The system is not open to negotiation. I have informed my aunt. My aunt is, for the first time in 14 years, visibly pleased. I intend to ride this wave for everything it is worth." "I do not require sitting." She put the book down. "Your Grace, I am going to say something I would ordinarily hold until 7, but my tact is not coming tonight, because you are ill and I am tired, and Pepper ate something in the shrubbery that I am fairly certain was a mushroom, and I shall be dealing with the consequences of that at some point before dawn." He waited. "You do not require sitting. You do not require biscuits or tea or blankets or scarves or books or fires or any of the things I have been doing for 5 months. You do not require anything. You are a man who requires nothing. I have met exactly one other thing in my life that required nothing, and it was a stone, and it sat in a field for 40 years, and nobody loved it, and it did not mind, because it was a stone. You are not a stone. You are a man who decided to be a stone, because a stone is safer than a person. I am sitting in this chair because I am a person, and you are a person, and persons sit with persons when they are ill. You may dislike it. You may lodge your objection with the management. The management is me. The objection is noted. The sitting continues." She picked the book up again. He lay and watched her read with the absolute, unshakable confidence of a woman who has decided a thing and is not available for further discussion. He could see the spine. "You brought Austin." "I brought Austin," she said, not looking up.
Because Austin understood that a sensible person and a cold person are not the same animal, and that the difference between the two is the entire book. "You are reading over the wrong shoulder, Your Grace. You believe you are Eleanor. You are Edward. You are the man who cannot say the thing because saying it would be, what, dangerous? Revealing? You have been hiding behind sense so long that you have forgotten that sense without sensibility is only furniture, arranged very nicely, containing nothing." He did not answer. She read. He watched her read. Pepper, who had followed her up the stairs despite the mushroom and despite gravity, and despite his own strongly held views on the matter, was asleep on the rug. At some point she put the back of her hands to his forehead, and then 2 fingers to the inside of his wrist, and counted, and said, "Down. Good," and went back to her page. It took Jasper a full half minute to notice that she had touched him, and that he had not flinched. and another half-minute to understand that this was because she had made it medical, and had made it medical on purpose, and had handed him the excuse before he knew that he needed one. He fell asleep. He had not meant to. His body decided, without troubling to consult him, that a warm room containing a woman reading in a chair and a dog on a rug was a safe room, and that a safe room is a room in which the eyes are permitted to close, and that the closing is trust. He woke at 3. The room was dark. The chair was empty. The blanket was on him, the lavender one. He lay in the dark holding the edge of it and thought, "She sat with me until I slept. She went. She covered me. She left the dog. And then, there is no invoice." And then, much more slowly, because it came from a long way off, she called me a stone. And she was right. And she has been feeding a stone at 5 in the morning for 5 months, and has not once asked it to be anything else. He pulled the blanket up and slept like a man whose body had finally been shown the evidence it had been waiting 28 years for. That a person can be in a room and leave it, and the leaving not be a withdrawal. The leaving said, "The blanket stays." We will take a very short break. If you do not want to miss new stories, please subscribe to the channel. Chapter 4. The trouble, when it came, was not built out of lies. That was the whole difficulty with it. In April, Augusta Vane began to tell the truth. She told it at the Kell Bridge Assembly over cold beef, in the pleasantest voice in the county. She said that the housekeeper's niece at Ashgrove had sat alone in his Grace's bedchamber for several hours during his illness. That was true. She said that the girl rose at 5 to bake for him personally. That was true. That the Duke had been seen about the estate in a knitted scarf of the kind a laborer's daughter makes, and that it was not the estate's wool. True. That the girl had been carried down to the Dower House and presented to Lady Margaret like a candidate. Broadly true. She did not say what any of it meant. She left the meaning lying on the table where the county could pick it up for itself. And the county picked it up, because a county always will. By the first week of May, there was a version of it in every kitchen between Marbury and Kell Bridge. And the version was this: that a clever girl with nothing had gone into a lonely, rich house and worked steadily on a man who had never in his life been worked on before, and that it was very nearly funny how well it had gone. Ned Fitch, who loved Iris and had the discretion of an open window, made it considerably worse by defending her in a public house. Mrs. Caldwell heard the whole of it on market day and came home, and did not say one single word about it, which was how Iris knew exactly how bad it was. She learned the rest of it 4 days later, when a letter came for her aunt from a lady in the next county who wanted a housekeeper, and had heard, delicately, that Mrs. Caldwell's situation might be about to become uncomfortable. Iris read that letter twice, standing in the passage, and understood the shape of the whole thing. 14 years, no error, no opinion, and a niece who lit fires. She went upstairs and packed her trunk, which took 19 minutes, because she owned very little, and had never in her life owned anything she could not carry. She told him in the estate office, standing, with her hands folded, at 3 in the afternoon. "I am giving a month's notice, Your Grace. I would give the month, but my aunt's position is better served if I am gone by Friday, so I would ask you to release me. I will go to Kell Bridge and then south. I have a place promised at an inn there. It is respectable, and the woman who keeps it is fair." Jasper stood up. "No, that is not an answer available to you. You will not go because of what a woman said over cold beef?" "I am not going because of what she said. I am going because what she said was true, and true things are the only ones that stick. I did sit in your room. I did bake at 5. That was mine to do, and I am not ashamed of any of it, and I would do all of it again tomorrow." Her voice did not move at all, which was how he knew what it was costing. But my aunt has spent 14 years building a character that will follow her into her grave, and I have spent 7 months spending it. She will not say so. She will never say so. That is precisely why I have to. Then let me. Let you what? And here the Duke of Ashgrove discovered that he did not have the words. He stood in his own estate office, in front of the only person who had ever handed him anything free, and he opened his mouth, and there was nothing in it. There was no sentence anywhere in his education, in 28 years of the finest instruction money could arrange, that would do the work he needed done. Because the sentence he needed was, "Please stay." And nobody had ever said it in that house. And a man cannot repeat what he has never once heard. "I do not know how to ask," he said. "I know," said Iris. She left on the Friday. She took the trunk and the dog, and she did not cry. And Mrs. Caldwell stood at the side door and watched the cart until it turned out of the sweep, and then went in and cleaned the still-room shelves, all of them, twice. Jasper went down to the Dower House that evening because there was nowhere else in the world to go. Lady Margaret listened to the whole of it without interrupting once, which was, in her, the equivalent of weeping. Then she said, "Sit down. I have been waiting 22 years to give you something, and I had begun to think I should have to leave it in a drawer with a label on it." She sent her woman for a box. Inside the box was a household ledger bound in green board, the 5th Duke's own, in the 5th Duke's own hand, for the years 1796 to 1800. "Your father recorded everything," said Lady Margaret. "It was the only faith he had. Turn to the November of '98. He turned to it. It was a page of ordinary things, coals, candles, a farrier, repairs to the ice house. And halfway down, in the same neat hand, in the same column as the coals, a line. A. Pike, nursery. Discharged without character. Excessive familiarity with the child. Wages to date, £2 11s. Jasper looked at it for a long time. "She used to pick you up," said Lady Margaret. "That is the whole of the offense. You cried at night, as infants do, and she went in and picked you up, and your mother said it would make you demanding, and your father said it would make you soft, and after several warnings they turned her out into November without a character, which in that trade is the same as breaking a woman's legs. You were 2 years and 1 month old. You cried for 11 days. I was told to stop calling at the house until you had stopped." 11 days. 11 days. And after that, you did not cry. And everybody in the house said what a very good child you had become, and I have not been able to hear the phrase, "a good child," since, without wanting to break something. Jasper sat with the green ledger open on his knees. "I was not," he said, and stopped. "Say it." "I was not unlovable. Somebody was removed for loving me, and it was entered in the accounts at £2 11s. And then the Duke of Ashgrove, who did not raise his voice and did not fidget, and had been described in 3 counties as a cold man, put the ledger down on the floor very carefully so as not to damage it, and put his face into his hands, and wept, in front of his 87-year-old great-aunt, without composure and without apology, for a good while. Lady Margaret did not touch him. She had known him from birth, and she knew better than that. She sat opposite with both hands on the ivory head of her cane, and let him get to the end of it, and when he had finished, she said, "Now, Anne Pike is alive. She is 79, and she lives with her son's widow in Marbury, in the 3rd cottage past the smithy, and she has lived there 6 years, which is to say that she has been 2 miles from you the entire time. I did not tell you before because you were a stone, and there was no sense in it. You have stopped being a stone. That was not my doing. Go and get the girl. She will not come back for me. No, said Lady Margaret. "She will not. She has more sense than that. Write to her anyway. Write it badly. Badly is better." He wrote it badly. 4 lines, 3 of them crossed out and left crossed out, because he could not find any way of saying it that was better than the crossing. What was underneath was this:
"There is a woman in Marbury who was dismissed for picking me up when I cried, and I did not know she existed until Tuesday, and I have gone to see her, and I find I cannot make myself go without telling you first. You are the only person I have ever wanted to tell anything to. That is the whole of the invoice. J.W." It reached her at the inn at Kell Bridge on a Wednesday. She was back in Marbury on the Thursday, having walked the last 4 miles because the carrier would not go out of his way, carrying a dog who was not built for it. She did not go to the hall. She went to the 3rd cottage past the smithy. He found her there 2 hours later, sitting on a stool in a kitchen the size of his dressing room, with Anne Pike's hand in both of hers, and Pepper asleep on the hearthstone. And Anne Pike, who was 79 and small and brown as a nut, was in the middle of a sentence. She stopped when the door darkened. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "You were a very loud baby." Jasper said, "I have been told I was a good child." "You were a loud baby," said Anne Pike, "which is a different thing, and better." She let go of Iris's hands and put both of her own out. "Come here, then. Let me look at you." He crossed the room and knelt down on a flagged floor in front of a chair, because there was nowhere else in the world to be. And an old woman took his face in 2 hands that had been out of work for 6 years, and turned it once to the left and once to the right, the way you check a child for a temperature. "I picked you up," she said. "They told me not to, and I did it anyway, and I would do it again tomorrow, and I have thought about you every November for 22 years, and I have never once been sorry." Iris got up quietly and went and stood in the doorway with her back to the room, and looked hard at the smithy across the way, and did not turn round for some minutes. Because there are moments a person is permitted to witness and not permitted to interrupt. Anne Pike came up to the hall the following week, and was installed in the South Lodge, with a pension entered, at Jasper's instruction, in the current ledger, in the current hand, in the same column as the coals, because he said that it belonged there, and he wanted it exactly where his father would have put it. The county, meanwhile, had begun the second half of its performance. They always do. A county will laugh at a thing for 6 months, and then discover that it always thought the thing inevitable. By June, the version being told between Marbury and Kell Bridge had improved considerably. That the Duke had gone out of his mind, which was frankly overdue. That the girl had walked 4 miles carrying a dog. And that Lady Margaret Wyndham, who had not been seen north of her own gate in 11 years, had been carried into the Kell Bridge assembly rooms in a chair by 2 footmen, and had sat in the middle of the floor for an hour and a half calling, "Iris Lockwood, my nephew's Miss Lockwood," at a volume that could be heard in the card room. But the reckoning itself was Iris's, and she took it in her own way, which was not the way anybody had planned. She stood up at the midsummer quarter dinner at Kell Bridge, where the rents were settled and the county ate cold beef and looked at one another, and she said her piece plainly, and the room went quiet in stages, table by table. "I am Iris Lockwood. My father was a tenant farmer in Oxfordshire, and my mother is dead, and my aunt is a housekeeper, and I have £40 and a dog. Everything Mrs. Vane has said about me is true. I sat in his room while he was ill. I baked for him at 5 in the morning. I gave him a scarf my father made. I did all of it, and nobody asked me to, and I would do every bit of it again. What is not true is the meaning that has been hung on it, and since nobody else can take that down, I shall. I did not do it in order to be a duchess. I did it because I walked into a cold house and found a man sitting in the dark being extremely polite about going blind. And where I come from, you do not leave a person like that.
You bring him a light and a hot drink, and you keep bringing it until he can take it without flinching. It is not a campaign. It is what my father did. It is what most of you do, for your own, without thinking, and it costs you nothing at all to call it kindness in your own kitchens and scheming in mine. I should like to know when precisely the price changed, and who said it. Nobody answered, because there was no answer. I am not asking for your good opinion, said Iris. I am telling you what I did and why, so that when you repeat it, and you will at least have the facts in the right order. Thank you for the beef. It was dry. Then she sat down, and Lady Margaret, from the middle of the floor, said, "Hear, hear," at the volume of a woman who has nothing left to lose and 11 years of silence to spend. Chapter 5. The last thing Iris did before she permitted herself to be happy was to go and see the woman who had tried to ruin her. She went alone in the morning, without telling anybody, and she took a folded paper with her. Augusta Vane received her in a drawing room in which the fire had not been lit, and did not intend to be, and stood and did not offer a chair. "I have nothing to say to you." "I know. I have something to say to you, and it will take 4 minutes. Iris put the paper down on the table. "That is a deed of settlement. 400 a year to you, charged on the Marbury rents, in writing, witnessed, and not in the gift of the Duke of Ashgrove or of any duke who comes after him. He has signed it. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be reduced. If he dies tomorrow, it stands. If he takes against you, it stands. If I take against you, which I may, it stands." Augusta Vane did not move. "Your husband left you nothing," said Iris, "because he was 31 and did not expect to die. And since then you have lived on an allowance that his father's cousin pays because he chooses to, and that has never once been written down anywhere. I found it in the accounts in November. 400 a year, entered under the general charges, with no instrument at all behind it. 6 years of living on a thing that could be stopped by one man in a bad temper, and a boy at school with fees that must be found every quarter, and no way on this earth to make yourself safe. You were not frightened of me. You were frightened of a duchess who would read the books. So was I, in your place, and I would have done something very like what you did, and I would have done it better, because I am better at arithmetic." Augusta Vane picked up the paper. Her hands were not steady, and she saw that Iris had seen it, and something in her face came apart along a line that had been holding for 6 years. "Why?" she said. "Because being frightened about money for 6 years is a particular kind of cold," said Iris. "And I have been cold in that way, and I would not leave a dog in it. Also because you have a boy, and boys are expensive, and terror is a poor way to raise one." "You could have destroyed me." "Yes," said Iris. "I have thought about it a good deal. It was the more enjoyable option. But I am going to be living in that house for a very long time, and I find that I do not want to begin it by making somebody smaller. Read the deed. There is nothing in it that asks you for anything. That is not a trick either." She picked up her gloves. "Good morning, Mrs. Vane. The fees fall due at Michaelmas. You will find that you can meet them." She got as far as the door before she heard the sound behind her, and she had the grace to keep walking and to shut the door upon it, because some things a person is entitled to do without a witness. He came to the kitchen at 5 the next morning, and every morning after, and sat in the dark, waiting for the sound of her on the stairs. She came down with the lamp on the second morning in July, and stopped. "You are sitting in my kitchen in the dark?" "Yes." "At 5 o'clock?" "Yes." "Are you going to explain, or are we treating this as an exhibition? Because, as an exhibition, it is quite good. Duke in kitchen before dawn. Very modern. Very bleak." "I would like to watch you bake." She set the lamp down and looked at him, and one eyebrow went up about 1/4 of an inch, which, in the facial vocabulary of Iris Lockwood, was a standing ovation. You, the Duke of Ashgrove, a man who flinched when I touched his collar and who kept a scarf in a drawer for a fortnight because wearing it felt contractual. You wish to sit in a kitchen before dawn and watch a woman mix flour. Yes. Very well. There are rules. Rules. Rule 1. No talking before I have had the first cup of tea. Before the first cup of tea, I am not a person. I am a function, and the function bakes and does not converse. Rule 2. You may not help. The biscuits are mine. They are the one thing in this house that is mine, and I will share the eating, but I will not share the making. Rule 3. If you are going to sit there every morning and your face suggests that you are, you will have to accept that I talk to the flour. I talk to the flour and to the butter and to the oven, because my father talked to the animals, and I have no animals except Pepper, and Pepper does not listen, and the flour is a better audience. Those are the rules. Do you accept them? I accept. Good. Sit there. Do not move. You are furniture. Furniture does not talk before the first cup of tea. She made her tea and drank it and began. He watched her hands, which were small and chapped across the knuckles and entirely certain, working the flour and the butter with a precision that was not fussy, but practiced. The precision of a woman who has done a thing 10,000 times and still counts each one a private achievement. She said to the flour, "You will behave today. Yesterday you were lumpy. I do not tolerate lumpy. Lumpy is a moral failing, and I expect better." She said to the butter, "You are cold. You are always cold. We have discussed this. Room temperature is not a suggestion. It is a commitment. Make the commitment." She said to the oven, "I am putting them in. You will heat evenly. You will not catch the edges. We have spoken about the edges. The edges are the first thing he tastes, and the first thing a person tastes is the thing by which he judges everything after it, and I will not have my work judged on a burnt edge. Are we clear?" She shut the oven door. She turned round. He was looking at her, and his face was doing something she had not seen it do. "You are making a face." "I am not making a face. You are making a face I do not have on file. Your face has had 3 expressions in 9 months, neutral, suspicious, and asleep. This is a 4th. I am not equipped for a 4th. What is it?" He stood up. He crossed the kitchen and stopped in front of her, and she looked up at him, because she was 5'3", and he was over 6 feet, and the looking up had been the geometry of every conversation they had ever had. He held out his hand, palm up, open, empty. She looked at his hand. She looked at his face. "Your Grace?" "Jasper." "Jasper." She said at once, carefully, the way you set down something with a crack in it. "You are holding out your hand." "I would like you to take it." "Why?" "Because you touched my collar 9 months ago and I flinched. And I have spent 9 months trying to discover whether that was permanent." She put her hand into his. He did not flinch. Her fingers were warm and floury and small in his, and his shoulders did not come in, and his breath did not stop, and nothing in him closed. He stood in the middle of his own kitchen at 5 in the morning with his hand full of somebody else's hand, and he stayed open, and stayed, and stayed. "You did not flinch," she said very quietly. "No." "That is the 4th face, then. That is what it looks like from the outside." "What does it look like?" "It looks like a man finding out that another person's hand is not a bill." He did not let go. "Iris," he said, "I want to say something, and I want to say it properly, because I have got everything else wrong and I should like to get this one thing in the right order. I did not fall in love with you because you were kind to me. A great many people have been correct to me. You were not correct. You came into my library on your second day and told me that I had been reading last year by candlelight for an hour, which was true, and which nobody in this house had told me in 6 years, because nobody in this house was permitted to tell me anything. You told me the truth on the second day. You have never once stopped. You walked 4 miles carrying a dog. You put a settlement on Augusta Vane's table for $400 a year that I should never have thought of, because it would not have occurred to me that a person could be frightened about money for 6 years without saying so. And it occurred to you in November, and you said nothing, and then you paid for it out of the first hour in which you had any power at all. You stood up at Kell Bridge in front of 90 people who had spent a season laughing at you, and you did not defend yourself once. You explained yourself. There is a difference, and I have watched a great many people fail to find it. You knelt in a cottage in Marbury and held the hands of an old woman you had never met, because she had picked me up when I cried. And then you got up and went and stood in the doorway with your back to the room, so that I could have that without being watched. I have been shown a great deal of care in my life, and all of it had a purpose. You are the first thing that ever happened to me without one. I do not want you because you have been good to me. I want you because I have watched you for 9 months, and I have never once seen you be less than you are when there was nobody there to see it. You bake in the dark. That is the whole of it. That is the whole of my case. The kitchen was quiet. Somewhere above them, a floorboard settled. I should like to marry you, said Jasper. I am aware of what it will cost you. The county will be at it for 20 years. I am asking anyway, because I have finally understood that a person may be asked for something without it being a bill, and because I would rather be warm and wrong than cold and right. Iris looked at him for a long moment. You are proposing in a kitchen at 5 in the morning with flour on your hand and a dog on your foot. I am. My father proposed to my mother in a barn. She said yes, holding a chicken. The chicken objected. The marriage was excellent. I come from a long line of badly staged proposals, and this is entirely on brand. She tightened her hand round his. Yes. With conditions. Conditions. Condition 1. I go on baking the biscuits. Nobody else touches the biscuits. They are mine. They are yours. Condition 2. Pepper sleeps in the bedroom, on the rug. He has claimed the rug. The rug is his. You will not dispute the rug. I will not dispute the rug. Condition 3. And this is the one that matters. When you flinch, and you will flinch, because a thing that is 28 years old does not pack up and leave in a morning, you will tell me. You will not hide it, and you will not pretend that it did not happen. You will say, Iris, I flinched. And I will say, I know. Give it a minute, and we will stand there like 2 fools in a corridor until it has passed, and then we will get on. That is how this works. You flinch, I wait. You stop, I stay. You stay, I stay. That has been the entire point for 9 months, and I am astonished that it has taken you this long to notice. You are extremely clever about wheat, and extremely stupid about people. It is one of your better qualities. Then she said, The biscuits are going to burn. Let them burn. I am absolutely not letting them burn. I have been at this every morning for 9 months. I have talked to the flour. I have negotiated with the butter. I have threatened the oven. I am not losing a batch because you have chosen this particular moment to become emotionally available. Feelings will keep. Biscuits will not. Release my hand. He released her hand. She took them out. They were perfect, golden, the exact color she had produced every morning since October. She held one out. Here, eat it. You do not need to count. He took it and ate it and did not count. Is it good? It is the best thing in the world. It is ginger. It has been ginger for 9 months. I have not altered the recipe. I know, said Jasper. I have altered. They were married in August at the hall, in the long room, on a plain morning, by license, with 11 people present. Lady Margaret in the best chair, Mrs. Caldwell in gray with her hands folded and her chin up, Anne Pike in the second-best chair with a new shawl, Ned Fitch in a coat that fitted him, the rest of the household standing at the back, and a dog asleep in a rectangle of sun on the floor. Augusta Vane sent a note and did not come, and the note said only that she hoped they would be happy and that the fees had been met. Iris kept it. The county talked about it for years, and by the second year the county had decided that it had always seen it coming. There is one more thing, and it is small. In September, he gave the Buick back to her a second time, and she opened it in front of him, because she opened every book in front of him now, and she found, on the page about the Swifts, in the margin, in pencil, in a hand that was not her father's, one word. Yes. She looked at it for a long while. "You have written in my father's book." "I have." "I said that I would notice, and that I would comment, and that the commenting would be extensive." "You did say that." She shut the book and held it against herself, and did not comment at all, extensively or otherwise, for a considerable time. And on an evening that October, a year to the week from the day she had come up the drive in a carrier's cart with a trunk and a dog and 40 pounds, Iris Wyndham sat in the library with her feet up on a stool, reading in the last of the daylight until the print began to go gray. She did not ring. She did not ask. The door opened, and the Duke of Ashgrove came in with a taper, and crossed to the mantel, and lit the candelabra without being told, and the light went up the walls and found the gilt on 11 generations of frames. He did not say anything about it, and neither did she. He sat down in the other chair. She turned a page. Thank you for listening to the story all the way to the end. Please tell us which city you are watching from and what the story made you feel. Do not forget to subscribe so you will not miss new stories.